3 weeks before my wedding, my photographer called me sounding confused. She said, "Hi, I just wanted to confirm something. Your mom told me you canceled the wedding and asked for your deposit back." I actually laughed at first, because my wedding was not canceled, and my mom was definitely not supposed to be calling my vendors. Then the photographer said something that made my stomach drop. She sounded very convincing, and she told us some pretty serious things about you. In that moment, something inside me went cold. My own mother had been secretly messing with my wedding. And she didn't just call the photographer. She called every single vendor. What she told them about me was so embarrassing that 2 of them had already decided to stop working with me. At first I thought there had to be some mistake. But there wasn't. Stick with me, because this story gets worse before it gets better. My name is Avery Bennett. I'm 29, and I work as a graphic designer in Colorado. I've always had a complicated relationship with my mom, Janice Bennett. She likes control. She always has. Growing up, she had an opinion about everything in my life. My clothes, my friends, even the college I went to. Things got even harder when I met my fiancé, Lucas Hale. Lucas is the calmest person I know. He works as a software engineer and treats everyone with respect. My friends love him. My coworkers love him. But my mom never did. She always said Lucas wasn't good enough for me. She thought I should marry someone richer or more impressive. Still, I never imagined she would go this far. After the photographer's call, I started calling my other vendors one by one. The caterer, the florist, the venue coordinator. Each conversation made my heart sink deeper. My mom had contacted all of them pretending to speak for me. She told them I was overwhelmed, irresponsible with money, and possibly canceling the wedding. One vendor hesitated before telling me the worst part. My mom had warned them that I might be having mental issues. I just sat there in silence after that call ended. My own mother had been secretly destroying my wedding plans behind my back. And the worst part, I still didn't understand why she would do something like this. But one thing was very clear. I was going to find out. After those phone calls with my vendors, I couldn't stop thinking about my mom. The truth is, control was never new for her. My mom, Janice Bennett, had always needed to control everything in my life. When I was a kid, she picked my clothes every morning. If I tried to wear something she didn't like, she would say it made me look cheap or messy. So eventually I stopped arguing. She also controlled my friendships. If she didn't like someone's family or background, she would slowly push them out of my life. She would say things like, "You deserve better friends than that." Even when it came time for college, she had a plan ready. I wanted to study art somewhere farther away, but she convinced me to stay closer to home and choose something more practical. She always said she knew what was best for me. For a long time, I believed her. Then 4 years ago, I met Lucas. Lucas Hale was very different from the kind of man my mom imagined for me. He didn't come from a rich family. His parents worked normal jobs, and he paid for most of his education himself. He worked hard and slowly built his career as a software engineer. To me, that made him even more impressive. But my mom didn't see it that way. The first time she met him, I could already feel her judging him. She was polite on the surface, but I could hear it in her tone. At family dinners, she would make little comments that sounded harmless but weren't. "Oh, Lucas, that must be such a stressful job." Or, "Avery always had big dreams. I just hope she doesn't settle." Lucas never argued with her. He stayed calm and respectful every time. That was one of the things I loved most about him. I kept telling myself that my mom would eventually come around. But when Lucas proposed to me last year, something changed. My mom didn't yell or refuse to come to the wedding. Instead, she became very cold and critical. Every wedding decision I made seemed wrong to her. The venue was too small. The flowers were too simple. The guest list was embarrassing. At first I thought she was just being difficult. But after learning what she did to my vendors, something finally clicked in my mind. My mom wasn't just trying to control the wedding. She was trying to stop it from happening at all. After the first call from the photographer, I felt sick to my stomach. But I knew I needed to hear the full truth. So I started calling the rest of my vendors one by one. The first person I called was the florist. At first she sounded nervous. She kept pausing like she wasn't sure if she should say everything. Finally she sighed and explained what happened. She said my mom had called her a few days earlier. My mom told her she was helping me because I was overwhelmed with wedding stress. According to her, I had suddenly become careless with money and might not be able to handle the wedding plans anymore. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment as I listened. But that wasn't even the worst part. Next, I called the caterer. The caterer sounded even more uncomfortable. She said my mom had told them something very strange. My mom warned them that the wedding might be canceled because Lucas was not the man Avery thinks he is. The caterer said my mom sounded very serious, like she was trying to protect them from getting involved in a bad situation. By the time I ended that call, my hands were shaking. Then I called the venue manager. That conversation was the hardest one. The manager explained that my mom had contacted them twice. During the second call, she said something that really worried them. She told them that I might cause problems on the wedding day. She said I was emotional and unpredictable, and they might need security just in case something went wrong. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. My own mother had been telling people I was unstable. These were people I had trusted with one of the most important days of my life. And now they were hearing horrible things about me from my own family. When Lucas came home that evening, I told him everything. Every call, every lie, every embarrassing thing my mom had said. He sat quietly and listened the whole time. He didn't interrupt me once. When I finished talking, I felt exhausted and angry at the same time. Lucas thought about it for a moment before speaking. Then he said something that made me stop and think. Your mom doesn't want this wedding to happen. I nodded slowly because that was starting to feel obvious. But Lucas wasn't finished. If she's already sabotaging your vendors, he said calmly, then she's probably not done yet. That's when he shared an idea. Instead of confronting my mom right away, we would wait and watch what she tried to do next. That night, Lucas and I decided we couldn't just sit there feeling shocked. If my mom was really interfering with my wedding, we needed proof. The next morning, we started calling the vendors again. This time, the conversation was different. I explained that someone had been pretending to speak for me and giving them false information. I apologized for the confusion and told them I was trying to understand exactly what had happened. Most of them were very understanding. They said the calls from my mom had confused them too. Luckily, a few of them had kept records of those conversations. The florist told me she had saved a voicemail from my mom. The caterer said they still had emails. The venue manager even had notes from their phone calls. Lucas and I listened to everything carefully. Hearing my mom's voice in those messages made my chest feel tight. She sounded calm, polite, and completely confident. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her too. In one message, she said, "I'm just trying to protect my daughter. She's under a lot of pressure right now." But the rest of the message was full of things that weren't true. She described me as irresponsible with money. She said I had been acting emotional and unstable during the wedding planning. One message from the florist was especially painful to hear. My mom's voice said softly, "I don't think Avery is thinking clearly about this marriage." It felt like she was slowly tearing apart my reputation with people who barely knew me. I sat there in silence after we finished listening. I felt angry, hurt, and betrayed all at the same time. I couldn't understand how my own mother could say those things about me. Lucas reached over and gently squeezed my hand. Then he said something that made me stop thinking about my feelings for a moment. "If she's doing all this," he said calmly, "it means she thinks she's going to win." That idea stayed in my mind. My mom believed her plan was working. She probably thought the vendors were backing out and the wedding would fall apart on its own. And if she believed that, then she might try one last move to finish what she started. So Lucas and I made a quiet decision. We called each vendor again and confirmed that our contracts were still active. Everyone agreed to continue with the wedding, but we didn't tell my mom anything. Instead, we kept planning the wedding like normal, and we waited to see what she would try next. About a week passed after Lucas and I started gathering the messages from the vendors. Things stayed quiet during that time. My mom didn't mention the wedding much, and for a moment I wondered if she had finally stopped. But then I got another phone call. It was the venue coordinator. Her voice sounded careful, like she wasn't sure how I would react. She said, "Avery, I just wanted to check something with you. Your mom contacted us again." My stomach tightened the second she said that. I asked what my mom had said this time. The coordinator explained that my mom told them I had been feeling extremely stressed about the wedding planning. According to her, I had asked my mom to step in and help take over some of the decisions. But I had never said that. Not even once. Then the coordinator told me the rest. My mom had requested a meeting with the venue manager so she could finalize the arrangements for the wedding. I sat there in silence after hearing that. My hands felt cold. It suddenly became very clear what my mom was trying to do. She wasn't just calling vendors anymore. She was trying to take control of the entire wedding. If the venue believed she was speaking for me, she could start changing things, canceling services, or causing enough confusion to ruin everything. For a moment, I felt pure panic. But then I looked at Lucas. He had been listening to the conversation from across the room, and the moment I hung up the phone, he walked over. I told him everything the coordinator had said. Instead of getting angry, he thought about it quietly for a moment. Then he smiled a little, and suddenly I realized something. This might actually be the moment we had been waiting for. So instead of stopping the meeting, I decided to let it happen. I called the venue coordinator back and told her to go ahead and schedule the meeting with my mom. But there was one small change to the plan. Lucas and I would be there too. We just wouldn't be sitting at the table. The venue manager agreed to help us. He said there was a small office next to the conference room where we could stay without being seen. From there, we would be able to hear everything. Every word. Every lie. If my mom tried to pretend she was speaking for me again, she wouldn't know that I was right there listening. And this time, there would be witnesses. The day of the meeting finally arrived, and I barely slept the night before. My mind kept running through every possible thing my mom might say. I didn't know if I was more nervous or angry. Lucas and I arrived at the venue early that morning. The venue manager greeted us quietly and led us down a hallway to a small office next to the conference room. The door between the two rooms was slightly open, so we could hear everything clearly without being seen. My heart was beating fast as Lucas and I sat down. "This is going to be okay," he whispered. A few minutes later, we heard the sound of heels clicking on the floor. My mom had arrived. Her voice sounded calm and confident, just like it did in the messages the vendors had shared with us. She greeted the venue manager politely and sat down at the table. "Thank you for meeting with me," she said. "I wanted to talk about my daughter's wedding plans." I clenched my hands together as I listened. Then she started explaining things that were completely untrue. She told the manager that I had been struggling emotionally with the wedding planning. She said I had become overwhelmed and might cancel the wedding at the last minute. Hearing those words made my chest tighten. But she kept going. She told the manager that Lucas had been putting pressure on me. According to her, he was manipulating me into moving forward with a wedding I wasn't ready for. I looked at Lucas in disbelief. He shook his head slowly but stayed quiet. My mom's voice remained calm and friendly, like she was simply sharing helpful information. She even suggested the venue might want to prepare for last-minute complications on the wedding day. The lies kept coming one after another. What she didn't know was that the venue manager had quietly placed a recorder on the table. Every word she was saying was being saved. And I was sitting just a few feet away, hearing everything. Then my mom said something that finally pushed me past my limit. She told the manager that if things continued the way they were going, she might have to cancel the wedding herself to protect me. That was it. I couldn't sit there anymore. My chair scraped softly against the floor as I stood up. Lucas looked at me, understanding immediately. I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and pushed it open. Then I stepped into the conference room, and my mom's face went completely pale. The moment I walked into the conference room, everything went silent. My mom froze in her chair. Just a second earlier, she had been smiling confidently, speaking like she was in charge of everything. But the moment she saw me standing there, that smile disappeared. Her face went pale. For a few seconds, she didn't say a single word. She just stared at me like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I walked slowly toward the table. Lucas stayed near the doorway behind me, quiet but supportive. The venue manager also remained seated, watching the situation calmly. I placed a small stack of papers on the table in front of my mom. They were printed emails, vendor notes, and copies of the messages she had sent or left for people. Then I looked directly at her and asked one simple question. "Why are you pretending to be me?" My mom blinked quickly and shook her head. "I'm not pretending to be you," she said quickly. "Avery, you're misunderstanding this." Her voice sounded nervous now, very different from the calm tone she had used earlier. "I was only trying to help," she continued. "You've been overwhelmed, and I thought the vendors might need clarification." Before I could answer, the venue manager spoke. "I'm afraid that's not accurate," he said calmly. He gently pointed toward the small recorder on the table. "This conversation is being recorded, and we also have records of previous calls." My mom looked at the recorder and then back at me. For a moment, it seemed like she didn't know what to say next. Then she changed her approach. She leaned back in her chair and sighed like she was tired of explaining herself. "Avery, I'm your mother," she said. I'm only trying to protect you. She glanced toward Lucas with clear disapproval. You're making a mistake marrying him, she continued. You're rushing into something that will ruin your future. Hearing those words made something inside me finally click. For years I had tried to keep the peace with her. I had tried to explain my choices and hope she would respect them. But standing there in that room, I suddenly understood something very clearly. My mom didn't see me as an adult. She didn't see me as someone capable of making my own decisions. To her, I was still someone she could control. Someone she could push, guide, and manipulate until I followed the path she wanted. And that was exactly what she had been trying to do with my wedding. But this time was different. For the first time in my life, I looked at my mother and realized something important. I didn't have to let her win anymore. After a few tense seconds of silence, my mom finally lost control. Her calm, collected mask shattered, and she started speaking quickly, her voice rising with emotion. I never approved of Lucas, she shouted. I never wanted you to marry him. I sat quietly, letting her words sink in. She paced the room a little, clearly upset, and then admitted the rest. I thought you'd eventually come to your senses. I wanted you to see what I saw. That's why I tried to quietly fix things. I froze for a moment. That quietly fix things meant she had been sabotaging the wedding from behind the scenes all along. She continued, her words spilling out. I thought the stress of planning would make you cancel the wedding yourself. I never meant to make anyone else involved. But she had. She had called every vendor. She had painted me as irresponsible, emotional, and unstable. She had even warned them that Lucas was not who I thought he was. I stared at her, stunned. I couldn't believe how calculated everything had been. This wasn't just Mom being overbearing. She had a plan. She had been trying to destroy my wedding and ruin my reputation with people I trusted. The room went quiet after she finished. Then the venue manager, who had been quietly observing the entire time, spoke. His tone was calm but firm. Janice, he said, you need to understand something. Impersonating a client and interfering with contracts isn't just unprofessional. It could have legal consequences. You can't just call vendors and tell them false information without consequences. Her face turned pale. She looked from the manager to me, finally realizing what she had done. The room had shifted. The power she thought she had over the situation had disappeared. I could see it in her eyes, panic, disbelief, and finally, understanding. Her plan had completely backfired. She had tried to manipulate and control everything, but now the truth was out. For the first time, I realized my mom wasn't just a difficult parent. She had actively tried to sabotage one of the most important days of my life. And now, facing the reality of her actions and the legal warning, she had a bigger problem than me or Lucas. She had underestimated me. She had underestimated our support, the vendors, and the evidence we had gathered. For the first time, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The wedding she tried to ruin wasn't just saved. It was my day, my choice, and my life. After the truth came out, I stayed calm. I didn't scream, I didn't yell, and I didn't argue. I looked at my mom and said clearly, "You're not invited to the wedding." For a moment, she laughed. She thought I was joking. She thought I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I had already planned for this. I had called the venue security ahead of time and told them not to let her in under any circumstances. They knew exactly who she was and what she had done. Lucas stood quietly next to me, his hand holding mine. He nodded once, reassuring me that everything was going to go smoothly. Even though my mom was shocked, Lucas's family quietly stepped in to help. They made sure all the final arrangements were confirmed and that the vendors were all on the same page. Everyone knew what had happened, and instead of judging me, they supported me completely. The florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator, they all understood. They had seen the evidence and listened to the recordings. They knew that my mom had tried to ruin everything, and that it wasn't my fault. By the time the wedding day arrived, I felt a mix of nervousness and excitement. My mom had no idea what was coming. She believed she still had influence over the day, but she was wrong. And then she actually showed up. I saw her from across the street as she walked toward the venue, her confident stride and smug expression showing that she still thought she could take control. But she didn't get past the entrance. A security guard stepped forward calmly and stopped her. "Ma'am, you are not allowed to enter," he said. Her face went white. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked around, realizing that she had no allies here and that her plan had completely failed. It was the moment I had been waiting for. All those years of control, All the attempts to sabotage my happiness, all the lies, none of it mattered anymore. She had lost. I took a deep breath and smiled at Lucas. He squeezed my hand, and we walked into the venue together. Inside, everything was perfect. The vendors who had almost walked away were now fully on our side. The wedding ran smoothly, filled with laughter, love, and support from friends and family. And my mom. She was left outside, realizing for the first time that she couldn't control me, or this day. The morning of the wedding, everything felt calm and bright. I was getting ready with my bridesmaids, trying to focus on the day I had been dreaming about for years. Then I heard a commotion at the entrance. I looked out the window and saw my mom, Janice, standing at the doors of the venue. She was demanding to be let in, waving her hands and speaking loudly. I could see the staff trying to calm her, but she was persistent. I felt a quick surge of anger. Part of me wanted to rush out and confront her, to yell or make her understand what she had done. But then I felt Lucas's hand on mine. He squeezed gently and said, "This is our day, Avery. Don't let her steal it." I took a deep breath and nodded. I realized he was right. This day was about us, our love, and all the people who had supported us. My mom's actions could not take that away. Inside, the staff had everything under control. They refused to let her enter, following the instructions we had given them. I watched from the window as she gestured and shouted, realizing she had no power here. As the ceremony began, all the tension from the past few weeks started to fade. The vendors who had almost canceled because of my mom's lies were now fully on our side. They worked quietly and efficiently, making sure every detail was perfect. The wedding ran beautifully. My friends, family, and Lucas's family surrounded us with love and joy. Every smile, every cheer, and every happy moment reminded me that the day was ours. By the end of the ceremony, I understood something very important. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones you love. Family can betray you in ways no one else can. But even in those moments, you have the power to set boundaries. My mom tried to ruin my wedding, to control me, and to humiliate me in front of everyone. Instead, she revealed exactly who she really was. And for the first time, I could see it clearly. I finally walked away from her control, fully and completely. I chose peace over anger, love over fear, and my own happiness over her attempts to dominate me. That day, I realized that setting boundaries can change everything, and that standing firm can let you celebrate life on your own terms, no matter who tries to interfere. If you ever face family interference or manipulation, remember, setting clear boundaries protects your well-being and your plans. Document important conversations, communicate calmly, and seek support from trusted people. Taking control of your own life is not rude, it's necessary. Stand firm, plan carefully, and prioritize your happiness and peace.